I am Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist. I was not planning on doing this live today. I saw this news, I had a quick moment, and so I wanted to hop in and definitely talk about this. I try to cover the insanity pleas to just try to give some additional information, education around these. Let's start with a little history. So, Sidney Powell was attempted to use an insanity plea related to the death of her mother. And she had been in college. There had been some issues coming up in college, and the college had actually kicked her out. So they had placed her on probation, and the family was not aware of that. And then she had also been kicked out of the dorm and had been kicked out of school because her grades were failing. And then on the day that the school was notifying the family, because they just I don't it seemed like they just kind of had an idea that maybe the family wasn't fully aware of this. They did end up reaching out. Now, Sydney has been diagnosed, supposedly. She's been diagnosed with schizophrenia. And welcome from Canada. If y'all have questions as I'm talking about this, please let me know. I have like another 40 minutes or so to be able to talk about this before I have to get ready for my next appointment. And the way everything I heard, and I mostly heard the prosecution side. I did hear a few of the defense experts as well. But with this entire case, now it does seem like there was something going on, but to be criminally insane, to be found not competent at the time of the incident, there just has to be a lot of proof. You have to clearly, it's that situation of the person that does it and doesn't even know that what they did was wrong. They don't try to hide it. And so I've been waiting until we did see some expert testimony, and then also I was waiting for the verdict on this because and I think the jury did get it right in this one, just based on the facts that came forward with this. So in this case, they had some people from the college testified because they likely heard what happened. They likely heard her mother answer the phone, and then they heard two large thuds, and then they tried to call back, and then finally somebody calls back and says it's the mom, but they clearly know that it's Sydney. And so the fact that you tried to pretend like you were the mother, that's not something that someone who is truly, like, feeling like voices are telling them to do this, that is not something that would happen like that, where the person is completely detached from reality, completely in a dissociative state, and they don't really comprehend what they're doing. Now, does she have a mental illness? Like, does she likely have a mental health diagnosis? Yes. And I do think her family is going to support her through this process. So she's been, I think, out on bail. Like, I think she's been living with her mother's family, which, talk about being extremely like, this family, the level of forgiveness, and just like, I think they truly believe that something snapped with her, and I think they felt that way. The jury did not see it that way at all. So let me play a little bit of this expert, and we will keep going. Let me know how this sounds. I didn't have time to do my whole normal setup, and so if there's a little echo with this, let me know, because I just need to mute myself, and that should make it better. So this is one of the psychologists that was kind of explaining his thoughts on the case and why he did think that she met I believe this one believes that she meets criteria for criminal insanity.
In some cases for plaintiffs' lawyers or prosecutors, in other cases for defense lawyers.
I'm going to skip forward a little bit. I think he's just giving his background and all of that. So let's skip forward to him talking about this case and some of the things that he administered. Okay, it sounds good. Perfect. Good. I'm glad it sounds good. Thank you.
Structured interview of malingered symptomatology. It's called the SIMS. It is a test specifically designed to screen for potential malingering or exaggeration of symptoms in legal matters. The concerns are that this test addresses are in a personal injury case, for example. The concern is this person, what is the nature and extent of the person's psychological injury? And then do they appear to be credible?
I'll explain it a little quicker. So malingering is a fake bad. So that somebody is exaggerating their symptoms to look worse than what they actually are. I think there were some of those types of tests given in the Amber Heard trial as well. And that's where our favorite Dr. Curry, she really felt like she was exaggerating some of her symptoms in a particular way. And she didn't feel that all of the results were completely valid. And so he did give her a test like that. She likely did fine on it because also the impact of what she did to her mom likely caused depression, anxiety, like that likely caused a lot. I watched her because sometimes the camera would pan to her during court, and there were times when she cried. There were times where she seemed kind of checked out. I forget if it was this case, because there was a case I was watching where they were able, I think this one, she was able to not be in the courtroom for certain parts of it just because they were concerned of the impact that hearing or seeing certain things could have on her mental health. And so we'll keep going. I want to skip ahead to him talking about, and trigger warnings for the words and all that stuff, because this is a violent act that they're talking about.
Sydney was then retrieved the knife and stabbed her mother, and we saw the autopsy report that indicated those stab wounds and the trauma to her head were fatal. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Then we also heard from Detective Whitten that there was a follow-up phone call at 12:40 and 15 seconds.
Yes.
So 3 minutes and 30 seconds elapsed between those two phone calls, and Detective Whitten told us that all of the acts that occurred that resulted in Brenda's death occurred within that time frame.
Yes. I mean, in terms of assessing mental state at the time of the offense, information and evidence prior to those 3.5 minutes is relevant, but the most relevant span of time is those 3.5 minutes. That, what was her mental state at the time of the offense?
So my own personal belief is that I don't know that she had the intent to do what she did. I think it was a horrible situation, and I don't know exactly what was in her thought, exactly what was in her head. I think she was trying to avoid the reality that she had failed out of school and that her family was about to find out. And I think it was an impulsive thing, and this is what happened. And in a second, we're going to play the jury's verdict. But from everything I saw and heard, it did not seem like she had a complete break from reality where she didn't understand that what she was doing was wrong. Based on the testimony of the individuals that were on the phone with her, so her faking like she was her mom when the school officials called her back, that was kind of a big red flag for me
during those 3.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So let's just kind of unpack this a little bit. You talked about some manifestations or symptoms of schizophrenia.
So let's talk about schizophrenia real quick. So schizophrenia, there are a lot of different diagnoses that can include psychosis, that can include hearing things, seeing things. I don't know what specific type they gave her, because there is a paranoid type. There are different types of schizophrenia, but it's not this, because sometimes people talk about schizophrenia being a split in the psyche, and they describe it almost like bipolar disorder, and that's not what schizophrenia is. So schizophrenia is, there's some type of psychosis that is present. There's a lot of schizophrenia within the unhoused population, because sometimes when people do have severe mental illness, sometimes they don't take their medication regularly. So schizophrenia can be well managed with medication. There is a lady on YouTube, I don't know her name, but it's Living Well with Schizophrenia. She talks a lot about what it's like for her to live with schizophrenia. And I think she just kind of helps humanize, because sometimes in media, so just because somebody has mental illness doesn't mean that they're at a higher risk to engage in a violent act. In this case, it does seem like there were some things boiling up, and like she could have benefited from some help and support, and yeah, didn't.
Before March 3rd of 2020.
Yes.
Can you tell the jury, are there any studies? Is there any data on typically when schizophrenia
Between
might
18 to
start
21,
to show
sometimes
its
16 to
symptoms
20.
in a person?
I mean, first of all, there are a lot of different schizophrenic or psychotic disorders. Different disorders typically begin to be manifest at different points in development. It is not uncommon for individuals to have their first psychotic episode in the early 20s. Obviously, there are many factors related to that, including, significant stressors in their life, biological conditions that may or may not be very evident beforehand. I mean, I think it's generally accepted that certain psychological or psychiatric conditions have a significant biological component.
Ooh, I don't know what that sound was, but that was on here. That wasn't me. I think somebody dropped something. But with schizophrenia, it's common for it to run in families. That typically there is someone else in the family, even extended family. Like there can be an incidence. It's not like 100%. I think bipolar disorder might have one of the highest biological connections, but yeah. So I just wanted to say that part too.
Schizophrenia is one of those. Bipolar disorder is one of those. Major depressive disorder in some cases is one of those.
And there's a phenomenal comment, and this is true. So this comment from Liz: it's my understanding from therapists and doctors that know and talk about schizophrenia that they are often a larger risk to themselves than to anyone else. And this month is Suicide Awareness Month. And there is a hotline if anyone is having any type of unsafe crisis type thoughts. They changed the hotline number to 988. So Logic came out with a song, and anytime he performed that song, it was the 1-800. It was the old hotline number, but they have updated the hotline number to 988. But individuals that live with schizophrenia, they are often a larger risk to themselves than to other people, or they're also can be victims of crime due to being unhoused or due to maybe not understanding during a break in reality. They might be a victim of financial crimes or different stuff like that. Yes. And so this case, I've been following it in the background, And court TV. So I like the way that Law and Crime streams some things. And so, because I think on the verdict, I might have to skip through some stuff the way that court TV does some things. I have the full links to everything I'll be showing down in the description.
Obviously, those conditions, particularly depressive disorders or trauma-related disorders.
And depressive disorders and trauma-related disorders can have a psychotic feature, but not necessarily be schizophrenia. He kind of meshed. So those, they're not the same thing.
Can be also very much event-related. I mean, if an individual is exposed to significant trauma during the course of their development growing up, that obviously is going to predispose them to a variety of significant and at times dysfunctional psychological disorders or conditions. In Sydney's case, it's my opinion that her conditions were likely a combination of biological
and the one thing that I do want to say about schizophrenia, because there are other cultures and countries that manage schizophrenia better than how we do it here. So what's often best is for individuals to be able to integrate into their community and lives and into their world as best as possible. We often institutionalize people, which separates them and can kind of keep them in a cycle of dysfunction. There are countries that find safe ways to integrate people that live with schizophrenia in a way where they're not as much of a risk to themselves or others. And so I do like talking about that stigma. And I think there are safe ways to manage some of that and to support individuals that live with these types of diagnoses. I've worked with individuals with schizophrenia. I've diagnosed it in the past. If there's significant trauma, I want to rule out, is this trauma with psychosis, or is it schizophrenia, or is it a little bit of everything? Schizoaffective disorder is something that we see in psychiatric populations as well, where there are mood symptoms and there are also psychotic symptoms that happen outside, like that just kind of happen all the time. And that's where a schizoaffective disorder might be diagnosed. But
situational. And the onset, like I said, probably we have evidence of precursors back to probably several years before the events of 3/3/20.
So what were those precursors? Can you tell the jury, what do you recall identifying as some potential precursors or symptoms of schizophrenia well before March 3rd of 2020?
Some of the interviews that I did, like with several of her friends or with her English teacher, Catherine Milligan, indicated that she had not frequently, but at times pretty significantly demonstrated precursors like panic attack, panic symptoms, at times.
And panic attacks don't necessarily, because I work with a lot of people with anxiety and panic, especially with transition to college, that doesn't necessarily mean that a person is going to develop psychotic symptoms. It's odd that he would start there, but I guess he's talking about mental health symptoms in general.
Withdrawal. But again, when she was in high school, if you are looking at her and looking at the situation on the outside, everything looks like it's fine. She's an honor student. She's a scholar athlete. She's, not getting into a lot of trouble. There's no behavioral issue.
Right. And so he's pretty much going to give his opinion that she has schizophrenia And now I would like to share the verdict. And I have not watched this one fully, so we will watch this part together. I'm just going to check the chat. When my niece worked at a state hospital, the older schizophrenic patients were showing major symptoms of Parkinson's from years of, yes, so that's a medication that can, so the new antipsychotics, I think don't, so because there are new generation and old generation. She, I believe, is on Haldol. Haldol is one of the old generation antipsychotics, I believe. So I am not a medication expert. I am a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists go to medical school and like they're trained just like a regular medical doctor, and then they have 1 year of residency and then years of, training to be psychiatrists. But I took psychopharmacology. I'm aware, like I know about the medicines. I'm just not the expert on that. And so what I think about the prosecution's expert. So I did not see, I'm gonna be honest. So Tart with the Heart, I did not see the prosecution's, they must have been quick because I was trying to follow this case and I was trying to see what the prosecution's expert was going to say about like how they were going to explain why what happened and how she was sane at the time of the offense. And I do think she was having a mental health crisis. I could definitely see that. And yet, based on the definition of insanity, it does seem like she knew that what she did was wrong. And that's where a defense can say in that moment, there was a split moment where they did not know, where they were not aware, they were not in control. That's what the defense is going to say. And they're going to have experts that are able to convince the jury of that. And this jury did not buy that at all. So, Tart with the Heart, in my opinion, the more compelling evidence came from the university staff that were on the phone with her before and after, that were on the phone with mom, and then that Sydney talked to, and all the events that happened at the school with her living there, being asked to leave multiple times, all of that. To me, that evidence was a little bit more compelling. Them finding out from the sorority, from the president of the sorority, that she was still attending meetings, she was still acting like she was an active student, and she wasn't. So that testimony to me was powerful. Let's unmute this.
The hour by looking back. If you missed it, this is what happened when the verdict was read.
Verdict form number 1 as to count 1 reads, we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled, sworn, and affirmed, do hereby find the defendant Sidney Powell guilty of the offense of murder as charged in count 1. The form goes on to say, and we do so render our verdict upon the concurrence of 12 members of said jury. Each of us said jurors concurring in said verdict signs their name hereto this 20th day of September 2023. Each juror has signed in ink next to his or her name. Verdict form number 2 reads, we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled, sworn, and affirmed, do hereby find the defendant Sidney Powell guilty of the offense of murder as charged in count 2. And we do so render our verdict upon the concurrence of 12 members of said jury. Each of us said jurors concurring in said verdict signs their name hereto this 20th day of September 2023. Each juror has signed their name in.
Something that I thought was interesting is she kind of started crying before they had even started reading the verdict. And I don't know if she knew that it was likely going to be guilty. I thought that she was going to start crying once they read the first guilty. And then I've seen other people like Murdaugh and other guilty verdicts be read, and they have no reaction at all. And I was kind of expecting there to be some anger, or I was expecting there to be some type of reaction, and there wasn't. It seems like hers started even before. And I do think this is the consequence, or this is like what happened after what she did. And I'll be interested to see the sentencing, to see what the judge decides. Do y'all know if she was sentenced already? So I don't know. I know they did the verdict today. I don't know if they scheduled another day for sentencing.
Inc. next to their juror number.
What if there was an automated
Commercials. All right.
Verdict form number 3 reads, we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled, sworn, and affirmed, do hereby find the defendant, Sidney Powell, guilty of the offense of felonious assault as charged in count 3. And it reads, and we do so render our verdict upon the concurrence of 12 members of said jury. Each of us said jurors concurring in said verdict signs their name hereto this 20th day of September 2023. Each juror has signed his or her name in ink next to their juror number. And finally, verdict form number 4 reads, we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled, sworn, and affirmed, do hereby find the defendant, Sidney Powell, guilty of the offense of tampering with evidence as charged in count 4. Below that, it says, and we do so render our verdict upon the concurrence of 12 members of said jury. Each of us said jurors concurring in said verdict signs their name hereto this 20th day.
So they are probably going to put her on some type of watch for today, and probably for a while. She'll probably, because I think she's been out on bail. And so, because I think once you're found guilty, you are taken back and you are now going with them. And I do think that she'll be on some type of watch. Thank you so much for this. So sentencing will be on the 28th, depending on how that goes. Because if the judge says something, sometimes I stream those. I cover them after the fact. If I can do it live, if I'm available, I will. But yes, let me see this. What's your take on the family begging the prosecutor not to go forward with? I think the family already lost mom. I think the family didn't want to lose her too. I think the parents, so if I'm paying for college, I'm going to ask my child at the end of each semester, you got to print out your grades for me. Like, or I'm going to ask them to give me access so that I can, I'm not going to check their grades every day. I'm not going to email their teachers. That's helicopter parents. Like I'm not going to do that for my college student. But if I'm paying, I'm going to want to know, hey, how are things going? Like, I'm going to want to see your grades, because I think she was lying to her parents, telling them that everything was fine, and it wasn't. And so I really wish, I hope this is a message to people to, if you need help and support, to reach out for help and support. Because if she had went to the university and claimed mental health, so I've had people do this. I've had people come to, they've been put on academic probation. They went to college with ADHD or anxiety or some mental health diagnosis. They thought they would be okay. They were not. And now they need to be in treatment and they need some accommodations. I try to have them set up the accommodations before they go, because every college has a accessibility office, an office where if you do need certain accommodations that you can get them. But if her failing was due to partly to mental health things, and if she was going to get treatment and all of that, she could have appealed she could have appealed being on probation and being kicked out if she was working with them on a plan. But it sounds like I don't even know that she knew to even do that. And then I think Dad said she found out about her enrollment status when he tried. Yeah, he found out when he tried to pay for tuition, because they called the school and they were like, hey, what's going on? And I think Dad kind of let Mom handle Sydney. Based on Dad's testimony is heartbreaking. I'm not going to react to that, because he did lose his wife, and his testimony is very, very heartbreaking, because he gets the call from the police saying that there's been an incident, because the university realizes that something's not okay and they alert the police. And then and the lady that was handling all of that, the person from the university that did that, she knew to call the Akron police and not 911, because 911 would route it to the wrong place. And so her testimony to me was the most powerful that I saw. Anyone who covered the case, let me know whose testimony you thought really solidified your thoughts on this case.
Of September 2023, and each juror has signed in ink next to their juror number.
And so truly just, and if I was on the jury, I might have, because she was charged with murder and not manslaughter. And I'm not a lawyer. I don't know in her state. I don't, because she's in Ohio. I don't know how they defined all of that. Because sometimes people, but involuntary manslaughter would be more of an accident. And the individual was the way of the death. I get why they said murder. And YouTube is probably going to get mad at me for saying that one too many times. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. But just truly heartbreaking case. Going to be looking forward to seeing what the judge says. Some judges, I'm glad that they televise these things now, because some of the sentencing, like hearing some of the judges talk about everything they've seen, because the judge sits back and just hears all the evidence and sees everything, and they're not able to say anything. And then at sentencing, that's when they're able to kind of give an opinion. I don't know if the judge is going to go easy on her because she does have so much support from her family. I don't know. So if she had been found guilty by reason of insanity, or if they had said, yes, mental health was a significant thing, then normally you go to a state hospital, a state mental health hospital, and you receive treatment there. I don't know where she'll be placed. There are states that even within prison, if an inmate does need medication, so if they are on medication, because she's likely going to still need to be on her prescribed medication, if they do need therapy, there are some places where people are able to have therapy. It really depends on the resources that are available in the individual place. Let me know if y'all have any other questions on this one. Like I said, Dad's testimony, heartbreaking. I was a little surprised because it sounded like there were multiple experts that thought that she had schizophrenia and that she was going to meet criteria for this. And I saw a lawyer talking on court TV, and it almost looked like Natalie Lawyer Chick, but it wasn't her. So I think Dad said he found out about her. Okay, sorry, I already read that one. Yes. Let me know if y'all have questions. Even people on replay, I do keep an eye on those. And sometimes I'll either just answer in the comments, or I'll do a short video or a full video, just if there's something that needs to be explained a little further. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day.